can do that can't be done. There's nothing you can sing that can't be sung. There's nothing you can say, but you can learn how to play the game. It's easy. There's nothing you can make that can't be made. No one you can save that can't be saved. There's nothing you can do, but you can.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks very much for your attention. Really delighted to be here at Sage World. It's funny, it's like working for BlackBerry these days, you have to come on to the Beatles and talk about love and all that kind of stuff, right? So it's kind of always interesting to me. And where that brand spirit came from was actually looking at the way that people work in our customer base. And we always should remind ourselves that it's arguably the oldest adage in the book. But for all of us as business leaders and people that work in business, when you get to a point when the people in your organization actually love what you do and you start to empower them and figure out what they're going to do for your customers, then that's when businesses grow. And it's an old adage that we'll get to as we talk through the presentation. You guys know how important you are, and you don't need people from BlackBerry and Sage or anywhere else to tell you how important you are. There are 14 million, or nearly 14 million, small and mid-sized businesses in the UK. That's from the Federation of Small Business Research. And what we know about this community is that nearly 60% of the people employed in the private sector workforce are actually employed by innovators and entrepreneurs in small and mid-sized business. And more important than that, arguably, is that 50% of our economy, the revenue and the turnover from the private sector, is generated by people who work in small and mid-sized business. So you don't need me to tell you how important you are. And you can't talk about the future of any industry without talking about how small businesses and business leaders within mid-sized firms and small firms are actually going to access it and leverage it. So what are we here to talk about today? Well, this is a bit of a kind of a dramatic chart. I apologize. There's no kind of da-da-da music to go alongside it. But the reality is the world that we live in has fundamentally changed. And there's been arguably two, major technology disruptions in my lifetime. The internet and mobile. And the reason that smartphones and the reason that everyone's talking about mobile applications and the reason that this sector has more buzz than anywhere else in the world right now is because what we're talking about here is putting the internet in people's hands and on people's mobiles and able for them to carry it when they need it and access it when they need it. And it's kind of funny. I began my career in GE, and it was kind of around the year 99, 2000, and there was an edict from the then chairman and CEO, Jack Welch, to say, right, GE has to understand the internet faster than its competitors so that it can do new things for its customers. And he created an initiative called destroyyourbusiness.com. And that's the kind of way that Welch used to think about business, was how he would beat everyone in competition. And right the way through GE, business leaders were asked to think about how they would disrupt the standard ways that they worked in order to do new things for customers using their internet. And from the business leaders that I speak to in all size firms, everyone's trying to get the same grips around internet and mobile and what they're going to do with smartphone technology and what they're going to do with browser technology and what they're going to do with application technology that enables them to do great things for their customers. And the reality, what the internet did for companies more than anything else was empower people. And the days of the superhuman CEO who would go and close every single deal, or the superhuman customer service director that would go and manage every big account, is gone. And it's actually the people that work in those organizations have to be empowered to be able to have access to information in real time to make better decisions to build and grow their business and build and grow what they do for customers. So there's this amazing disruption going through our industry. And what we see is that even in what the UK calls the age of austerity and the dramatic conditions that we're in, it's small businesses and mid-sized firms that are thinking about innovation and growth. 65% of commercial innovations that are registered in the UK come from small and medium-sized firms. And what we argue is that it's small and medium-sized businesses that are thinking about not just cost containment and productivity and all the other things that people have to think about in recessionary economies. It's small and mid-sized business and business leaders that are thinking about how they build and grow and spend more time with their customers to do new things. So there's a tremendous amount of activity in that area. And kind of what I wanted to kind of share with you is some of the views of business leaders that we've kind of surveyed to see how they're thinking about the way they work in this age of initiative. And it was funny, I was chatting to the guys about how we should talk about mobile applications and mobile technology. And to me, you know, it's kind of wrong to keep referring in a way to small and medium-sized businesses. Like, what you guys are business leaders in your field. And what we thought we'd do is share some examples of what other business leaders are doing. So this is the challenge. There are inherently, if you believe old school economics, there are two at least, things that business leaders can do to really differentiate and build and grow their business. And the first is around process. And companies can look at how they touch their customers, how they sell to their customers, how they market to their customers, how they take orders from their customers. But the reality is that process engineering, at least for the mainstay, doesn't lead anywhere if your customer's not involved. And we can talk about technology. And you know, we're at a technology conference. You're all great customers of Sage. It's a great technology company. I work in the technology industry. But I can tell you that technology alone very rarely differentiates your business. And even as a phone manufacturer, and you know, I'd love to say this, that the phones that you put in people's hands would really differentiate your business, is kind of not true. The fundamental is that it's the people that work in your organization and you yourselves and the interactions you have with your customers that really truly differentiate your business. So what I was going to do is share with you a couple of examples, and some of these are from around the world, but this is a Whole Foods supermarket. And Whole Foods supermarket is one of the fastest growing retailers in the US. And some of you who lived in the Southeast may know that, you know, recently opened a store in Kensington. And if you've ever been to a Whole Foods store, then Kensington's the exact right place that you should be for a Whole Foods store. When I lived in the US, every time I went to a Whole Foods store, my bill was always at least over $100. Even if I was buying a tin of beans, it was always over $100. But they're a terrific store, and it's a great experience. And they put the customer at the heart of that experience. And what's amazing about Whole Foods and Whole Foods growth is the lady you see in the picture here is the lady that makes the decision about what goes on the shelf. Now, I'm sure that means a ton of very complex algorithms and a ton of complex planning back in supply chain, and I'm sure that would bring its own pain points. But what's important here is that that individual is empowered to make a decision about what goes on the shelf because the management team believes that she's the one, and all those that are like her, that know the customers the best and know what customers actually want to buy at any given point in time. And if I encourage you to go to a Whole Foods supermarket, you'll see how beautifully arranged it is. And I think, you know, last time I checked, it's second fastest growing retailer in the United States. All right, so our friends at Google. You know, Google has this thing called Wednesday Afternoon Club. And it's really an amazing concept. And even as Google has grown up in the last few years as being, you know, a tremendous corporation, and now I'm sure is a very different corporation than it was when it started, there are some principles at Google that they still keep. And Wednesday Afternoon Club is one of them. And the principle behind Wednesday Afternoon Club is that people get together and work on concepts about what interests them. And out of Wednesday Afternoon Club has come things like Google Earth, Google Wave, although it's come and gone. Buzz came out of Google Wednesday Afternoon Club. So there's a tremendous amount of Google's innovative product ranges that come out of the concept of their people being empowered to have these really, really creative ideas and then doing something with them. Malaysian Airlines. So Malaysian Airlines, in